Today we're chatting with Robert R. Gibson, a poet from Barbados, about his experience as a poet, editor, and independent book publisher, and how he uses social media to promote his publishing company. Robert is a member of the League of Extraordinary Poets in Barbados. Robert, it is an honor to have you on Caribbean Content Creators.
Hey, what's up, man?
Yeah. It's fantastic. Our relationship goes way back to, I don't know if it's 2008 or maybe a little bit later on than that. Let's talk about your backstory a little bit.
Many moons ago, when Adam was a lad, I started writing poetry at the age of 14. So 14 years old in third form here in Barbados, I was introduced to my first poem. Even before then, I was writing, but it was little short stories and stuff like that. I can remember, again, before the age of 14, the PE, I was skipping PE and lying to my PE teacher, saying that I didn't have my games closed just because I wanted to write. But I started writing officially, I would say, at 14. So we've been introduced to poetry by the English literature teacher, rest in peace, Mr. Clark. Always bigging you up every time. And he talked about poetry, and I decided I would go home and I would try this thing. I had not, I just put my pen to paper, just try this thing. I came up with a poem called The Student's Lament. It was pretty basic stuff. It was normal meter AB rhyme scheme. But so I came up the next day, and it's a typical situation. You slide shyly up to the teacher and give him this thing. He reads it and he's like, "Okay, you need to read this to the class." Scared out of my mind, I read it, but the class loved it. The poem was a humorous poem, insulting everybody from the headmistress down to the janitor, right? And I didn't really know. I liked it, but I didn't think anybody else would like it. But everybody loved it. And from there, I started writing. So from there, I wrote all the time. I wrote usually, and as I grew up, as I became a teenager, writing became cathartic for me. And I started writing just how I was feeling when I was going through depressions and stuff like that. I wrote. Then the poems became erotic because at the time, I was a nice little Christian boy. I had all of these urges, and it had nothing to do with. I could not do what Christians. You're not supposed to have sex before marriage. So I had all these urges. I had nothing to do with them. I poured them out in my writing, and that's basically how it started. Got married, got divorced, and when I got divorced when I got divorced around 2011, I threw myself back into poetry, and poetry again became my saving grace. It again became my catharsis, and I locked into my erotic poetry as a saving grace. I had been invited by a friend on Facebook at the time. She started sending me just events, Facebook events. Go here. She's like, you're in this place. You are in a sort of a depressed place. You need to get out. So at that point, then I had been introduced to. That was how I was introduced to an open mic event called The Vibe.
Thanks so much for sharing that. And going right back to that influences, Mr. Clark, you mentioned that 14 years old, and I was thinking about a teacher in my own time when I was about that age, 14 years old, and Mr. Gatsby. And it is so important, the role that these gentlemen and teachers, I should say,
Teachers in general,
that they have towards our own craft. I mean, because if that opportunity then presents itself, you could have found yourself a lot later on.
Yes.
And did you have any ambitions back then to become a published writer?
Nope. No, I did not.
You have books published?
Yes, you have 6 books.
6 books published. And you've since vented, and I'll get back into that. And what we will do is I will put those links in the show notes so that if the listener wants, they could check out your work there, right? So, yes. but you've kind of made a transition now where you've gone into passionate words editing services where you are helping others get published, and I'm really excited about that because it has always been a desire of mine when I first started writing to kind of give attention to people who have that ambition. So tell me a little bit about that transition towards you doing 6 books and then saying, hey, there's a space for me to offer this type of service.
Well, to be honest, the journey was wrought with imposter syndrome because I had my 6 books. And my mentor, my literature, I call her my lit mom. She's my literature mother. She saw her like Sandra Seeley, who's also recognized poet here in Barbados. She was always encouraging me, seeing me. I had started to. She always said to me, "You really should edit for other people," and I really and truly I was like, okay, but how do you do that? What does it look like? How do you charge for it? I had no idea. And for like maybe a year to 2 years, she was encouraging me. And I was like, nah, I can't, I don't know how to do this. I don't think I could get this done. But in 2016, I decided, you know what? I'm just gonna. In 2016, I said I'm gonna try this. I got like 2 jobs in 2016, one job in 20, one job. Well, actually from 2015, I got one job in 2016 that was a huge job. It's a memoir by the former general manager of Cable and Wireless. I got the chance to co-edit with the person who actually published it, and it's a huge book with like 10 parts. I was able to be paid for like 3 months for that one job. Really, it was slow going until 2020. Obviously, 2020 happened, the slowdown, the pandemic. And what that did was I was curating my list of clients. I was still doing things for people all during that time, but as I said, it was just a thing that I would do on the side. But in 2020, when I was part of the IT team, right? I have a computer science degree. And my last job before working for myself was database administrator. So, right, my job, one part of my job was taking care of the databases and the backups and the stuff of the company that I was in. And but because we were now on lockdown, all of that had to be done remotely.
And you've since been able to transition into doing this work full time now.
I left in September. So September 2020, I became full time. So 2020 till now, it's been a full time job.
And in that time frame, how many books have you edited, published, designed, front covers?
About 30.
Fantastic,
30
Robert.
30,
Wow,
30 to 50.
that is amazing. I am so proud. And have you been able to work with writers throughout the Caribbean, outside Barbados as well?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Fantastic.
When I do my IG, I do my ads to the Caribbean primarily, and I get Trinidad and Jamaica primarily. When I do my ads, when I target my ads to the Caribbean, I usually get people that come from Trinidad and from Jamaica. Although I've done from people other parts of the Caribbean as well. And of course, it's still got the US and stuff as well that come true.
Let's turn our attention now to the listener who probably has the ambition of writing a book, and they want to be aware of some of the pitfalls that they would fall into. So I'm counting on your experience here of having published, edited, designed the front covers for 30 books.
I see people who send me things, and I can tell that this is a first draft. There are too many. I am my job is to fix mistakes. I get that. Give it to the editor as polished as possible, which means you've done your first draft, you've edited your first draft, you've rewritten, you've probably given it to a couple people to beta read, and then you think that this is the best that you can do. What I find a lot of people do when they come to me is that they give me their first draft, and then I have to wade through all of the stuff that so the things that normally happen in a piece of fiction, for example, show don't tell. People are just the things that you would typically hear for a writing class. You need to give me more exposition. All of these things we will discuss, but if you read your work over and they see it as like almost like I don't want to use this analogy too deeply because I don't want people to get afraid. But see it like a final exam. If you're giving a project to an invigilator, you're gonna make sure that you give it to the best of your ability. And of course, there will be mistakes, but you do the best that you can. That is one of the things that I find a lot of people do. Good. Some people actually go through, and I can tell it's been, that they've done the work is an actual manuscript. Because what I find also is that some people literally give me, like, if it's an analogy of poetry, anthology of poetry, people literally just give me the poems. It's not a manuscript. It's just a word document full of poetry. I then have to sit down and work with you to put the book together. I mean, granted, it's more work for me and more money for me because I can charge accordingly. But you can. I want you to sit down, choose the poems that you're gonna put in, create sort of a structure. For example, when I did my first book, I knew that I wanted to focus on erotic poetry, but I also knew that I wanted to have a story sort of speak. So I decided that I would do things a little bit differently to what people expect. So when I thought of erotic poetry, I assumed that people would want to start, let's say, at the love poems, and then slide, like, so the love poems are emotional but not sexually explicit. Then you slide up to the heat. That's what I assumed most people wanted. So I decided I would flip the switch. So the hot things are right at the top, and then it comes down and cools down to the love poems at the end. So I had a plan, and I executed that plan for my first book. And for all my books, I have some sort of plan. When you come to me, I have available services where we can discuss and you can bounce ideas off of me and we can create that manuscript together. But honestly, if you're coming, definitely you should really plan out your manuscript first and put it together and make it give the best, put your best foot forward.
We share a lot in common, Robert, because I am a database developer as well. So I'm listening to you talking about your experience in writing, how you structure your books, and then you turn your attention now towards helping other writers. And I could relate to that experience. And when I think about the Caribbean writer or the Trinidadian writers that I have met, and a lot of them, we operating on a shoestring budget. That has been my experience for all of my books. It was just literally self-published books. I'm keeping the cost down. But there was something that appealed to me, that when you are reading a book, you want that experience to flow. It must be buttery smooth. And you have so much of different levels and layers you're thinking on. You're thinking about the structure of your story. Because a lot of us may treat or fall into the trap, rather, of treating it as you're looking for a proofreader. But editing is so much more. It's restructuring.
Exactly.
There's a very simple formula. And one of the good books I've read is a book my wife brought for me called On Writing by Stephen King. And it's a lot of good, it's a kind of semi-auto, maybe fictionalized aspect, thank you. And also it has some editing tips inside of there. And there's that aspect of, you have your first draft, and then your second draft is your first draft minus 10% of the word count inside of there. And it's a very simple, helpful rule, because really and truly, when you just slap a manuscript on top of someone with no thought to where I could have, chopped out words, get the essence of the story, restructure certain parts, determine simple little things like, every character may not need a name in the book, or your first sentence in terms of hooking a reader. So there's so much different elements for the Caribbean writer who's on a shoestring budget. Do you have any kind of freebies inside there that you could sprinkle and say?
Definitely read and read again, and look for trusted beta readers. This is not a person who is gonna tap you on the back and say good job. You want somebody who's gonna look for errors. You want somebody who's gonna say, okay, this character doesn't make any sense. So when I wrote my novel, which is obviously different from the poetry, when I wrote my novel, I had a beta reader named Asha, and Asha was instrumental. Every chapter I gave her, it was like I was writing it and I gave her the chapter. Every time it was done, I gave her the chapter. And that kept me going. And she would she would give me her honest opinion on the characters and stuff like that. For example, she said to me that she hated my main character. And at first I took it like if I took it to heart as though she meant I was writing badly. She said, "No, you have written a very complex and developed character. I just hate his guts, right? Because he is pretty much a womanizer, and he is pretty much a womanizer, and there was one particular scene that I knew when she turned from him because she liked him in the at the beginning, and I knew when she turned. I knew the scene that she turned. He was very conceited and very very disrespectful to the young lady he was with, and she actually said to me, "You need to give him all of the STDs on the planet at the same time." I was like, I said, "Asha, that's not, you don't do that to me." She said, "I hate this man." So, but honestly, like, you have someone who can give you that kind of feedback. You can't have a thin skin dealing with this, because I will be fair. As I said in another podcast the other day, as I said in another interview last week, I can be firm but fair. I can try my best to coach it in nice language, but you will get the truth, because I want you to have a good book, because not only is your book gonna reflect on you, if it passes through my company, it will reflect on me, and I need it to be as good as possible, as the best quality that you can give out.
I was wondering what our experience is like for you in terms of, have you, when you put out a book and it probably doesn't, the audience doesn't respond well to it. Is that like a punch in the gut for you?
To be fair, well, yes, I was gonna say, to be fair, it hasn't happened yet, but then there's actually one book that I know of that I asked someone close to me to review it, and her review, when she came back to me, she said, "I'm sitting on this review. I can't review." She said, "I can't read this book." And I mean, honestly, I was very surprised, because one, she had gotten the book after it was laid out, after it was edited by multiple people. I did my proofread at the end, and then I laid it out. So she had basically final copy, and I don't like this book. I can't read this book. I'm very surprised, because I love this book. But then I realized that she has a journalistic background. She is looking like she's counting the amount of semicolons, and she's doing, like, and certain things that she's looking at that, okay, you don't like the book, but obviously you not liking the book, it did affect me. It was a punch in the gut. And I honestly, I ain't gonna lie to you, I sat down for like 15 minutes considering my life choices. Like, did I do the right thing? Come in to do this job? Should I go back to doing databases? Like, I literally had that conversation in my head.
Yeah, I guess once you're in the content creation game, even that's one of the things that kind of kept me back from, like, self-publishing and wondering how people would respond to different projects, or what even happens if a client comes along and you're not too enthusiastic. You want to make the money, you want to keep your business afloat, you want to pay your partners, but you're not necessarily enthusiastic about the project.
I just shut my eyes and do the project. If it is something that there are two books I can think of right now that I was diametrically opposed to the worldview, but I needed the money, so I just shut my eyes and did the project. Some people, however, would probably decide that this goes against what they believe, or whatever the case is, and then they are obviously within their right to not take on the project. You obviously should not take on every project just because it is there. If you do not feel like doing this project, if you feel, I have turned down a couple projects as well for multiple reasons, and so I've done that too. Is like, oh no, okay, we can't work together, and so yeah, it happens. It happens.
But that's the curious thing, Robert, in terms of, when you're playing this self-publishing game. Self-publishing, that game is about kind of like, just getting the work out there. Because your role and my role in that capacity is about fulfilling this dream, the same dream that we had when I self-published my book, because back then I wasn't interested in the gatekeepers keeping my book out in terms of like a traditional pub. In fact, I didn't even want to go the route and probably have to wait years and get rejection letters. So I take up the mantle myself, self-publish my books. And it is a particular dream that you are helping someone accomplish. And one way they know, well, here's what, we've worked this, you've spent the money in terms of improving it. I am helping you accomplish this dream. A lot of the work here now is going to go into you along the lines of promotion and whatnot. So, I mean, I could relate to the experience that you're talking about there, but I guess when you really break down, it's two different worlds, traditional and self-publishing there.
It is. It is. I agree with you 110%. I say this all the time. My job and my goal is to see the joy in your face when you see that book for the first time, when you hold that book in your hand for the first time. I think of the one particular person who was the first Christian book I did, actually, and she that's a story in and of itself. But suffice to say that she when I put that book, she didn't actually have the book yet. It wasn't even in physical form yet. I just sent her a screenshot of it being laid out. And she burst into tears. She was so emotional about that. So I agree with you. My goal I call passionate words a self-publishing service, because my goal is to take all the hard work away from you and do that for you and do that hard work on your behalf. But so I don't really do, as you say, I don't really do a lot of rejections. But on the other end now, if you are a person, this goes back to another freebie. If you have hired somebody for their personal, if you've hired somebody for their professional opinion, take the opinion. Don't I've heard there are a couple of people that I've started and I said, this is what you need to do. And they're arguing with me about why they can't do it. And I'm like, you're paying me money. I'm giving you professional advice and you don't want to take it. Like that boggles my mind. Honestly, do you go to a doctor and then when the doctor says you need to take pills, do you argue with your doctor and say, no, I'm not going to take the pills?
It depends on the type of pills.
I'm just saying. So
no, any kind of content creation, whether it takes the forms of video, writing, editing, music. Yeah, as you say, you really have to have this thick skin in terms of, I could take the feedback, I could sit on it, I could chew it over, and then make a informed decision based on it.
Ultimately, it is your book. I will give you my opinion, and you have the decision whether to take my advice or not. Because sometimes what I decide may not be what you feel is right for your book, and that's okay, because it's your book. You can. So I say, on the one hand, I do say listen to your editor, but on the other hand, I do give you the respect that this book belongs to you. And you and I might not align, but you might find somebody else that might align with you, so you can go ahead and do what you have to do. But so on the one hand, definitely you should listen to your editor, but on the other hand, eat the meat, spit out the bones. What some of the things that my beta reader told me, I took to heart because I trusted her opinion. Other times I did not, because I had a particular goal in mind, and I decided that what she said it conflicted with what I was actually trying to do. So I do want to give that balance, that you can honestly take, matters into your own hands. It is really your decision at that point.
Where do you see your authors getting the best results?
Find any and everywhere to talk about your book. I literally have copies of my book in my car. I drive and like when I was self-promoting a lot more just before COVID, I would talk, I would actively seek out podcasts like this. I would actively seek out interviews. I would actively seek out anywhere that I can talk about my book. I would do so. The reason why I am internationally recognized is because I used to spend lots and lots of time on virtual open mics. So they were open mics, but they were not They were not where I would get up and go to somebody's location. There would be stuff like a Zoom meeting, or it was or web radio, and I would actively seek them out, and I would become a regular on those shows. So people started to get accustomed to my voice. Then I started getting fans. And then from those fans, people started following me. So of course, again, find any way that you can talk about your book. Create a social media presence, whether it be Instagram or Facebook, or Twitter, whatever. Find your niche, find some place that you like, and just go mad on it. I have a particular issue because my work is specifically erotic, so I have the Instagram censors to deal with. Just recently, my page has been killed for the third time, and now I gotta start back up again. But if you don't have that problem, you can definitely do things like use, especially now with like TikTok. You can do videos. This what's happening in the world today. People are no longer looking at static images. They're looking at videos. So they want to see videos on Instagram. That's why they have reels. They want to see TikToks. They want to be entertained. So what you do, you can definitely take your book and do a 3-minute or 1 minute just a excerpt. Just read the book. Read the book. Give it as much energy as you want. Do it to the camera. Or if you're shy, just do the voice and put the picture of the book there, and so that you don't let the fact that you're afraid of being in front of the camera stop you. But basically use it. So what my marketing consultant tells me, consistency, and people need to know that you exist, like you, and then they trust you. So they know you exist, and then the consistency makes you know that they can value what you have for them, and then that lets you trust. Then there builds a trust. So for books, you want to give, I think, just snippets, juicy snippets, something that would hook the reader, and they want to find out more about you. So that's basically just get in your face. Like, you ask me, if I want to come on this show, I'm like, yes. Because I am not promoting my books right now. I'm promoting my business, but it's the same thing. Anywhere that I can talk about passionate words, I will do so. Anywhere that I can talk about my books, I will do so, because that gets me in the front of people's faces over and over and over again, and eventually it's gonna click. Hey, let me check this guy out. Let me see what books he has. Let me see what his company is about. So it's all about consistency.
That is so true. I remember sometime I got some hard copies sold, and it was from a lady who said to me, she said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "No, sorry, but I don't." She said, "3 years ago, I stopped here, and I told you that when I come back to Trinidad sometime, I need to get a book because I didn't have money at the point in time." So that's by the consistency of being there and showing up. And I love what you say along the lines that consistency leads to people liking you and then trusting you. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about ebooks versus hard copies, particularly the reader who may be on a shoestring budget. They come to you and they say, my dream is to have a hard copy, but Kindle ebooks sounding like the way for me to go right now. Does a writer have to have a hard copy to succeed out here, you think?
No. No, I mean, it boils down to going back to marketing. It goes down to people knowing that you exist, right? You do not have to have a traditional hard copy book. Pretty much, obviously, from a financial perspective, the ebooks are normally cheaper, so you can go work harder to get that. If you're looking at a particular royalty fee that you want to get, you'll have to work harder. But no, I would not say that. I would not say that at all. I personally love Kindles. I love Kindle books. I love ebooks. I have thousands more books that I can read on my on my TBR list right now. I just bought two more just today, just because they look interesting. It's so easy to just click, point and click, point and click.
Yeah.
But I do respect and I do love the feel of a physical book, especially when you crack open a new book and you see that new book smell.
Yes.
I feel it. So I do understand what people mean, but you do not need a traditional book, a physical book, a hard copy book to succeed. You just need determination. You need to find your target audience. So one more freebie again. A lot of people decide that they want to write a book, so they just start writing. But I've come to realize, not only from writing my own books, but obviously starting my business, that the day that you have the book and you've published it, you are now author incorporated. You've now become a business. You have a product. So you now cannot think of your book as, this is why you have to do so much in terms of getting your name out there so hard, because you are now a business. One book dropping onto Amazon is literally a drop in the ocean. And unless you do something, people are not going to know the book exists. So you need to do, and you need to know, but just like with any business, you really should try to find out who your target audience is. Who are you writing for? Right? I made the mistake, I guess I could say I made the mistake of I just wrote what what I liked. I wrote what I liked. And the cover, I put on the cover what I liked. Right? I put on the cover what I liked. And I remember being in a writing group on Facebook. And this particular post was, post your cover, just the cover, and people will say if they would buy the book based on the cover or not. Just based on the cover, if they would buy the book. So everybody was doing it and said, hey, this sounds like a good idea. So I posted the original cover of my novel, Make It Rain. I have never gotten so many comments on one post ever in my life. I had 320, about 320 people responded to that post, but 98% of them said no. 98% of them said no, they would not buy that book just because of the cover. And I was surprised because, one, I loved the cover. And two, I spent a lot of money on the cover because the cover was done by a graphic artist that I respect. And it was literally hand drawn. So it was not a generic cover. But when I asked people, most people just said no and they did not give answers. For those who did tell me why, some of them said they didn't like the fact that it was like a cartoon. It looked like a cartoon. Some people said the lady looked scary. All sorts of different things. So especially in terms of like your cover, you need to find out what your audience would like. Obviously, depending on the type of the genre of book, you should, if it's a romance, people usually see the man, the man and the woman on the romance. There's a certain expectation if it's a romance novel, if it's a fantasy novel. Do research and figure out that so that you would put your book solidly in the trope, if you want to call it that. You know what I mean? So market research. So those are things that I would say as it relates to the thing, because I didn't do any of that, and it made me lose out, and I'm still now trying. I just don't have time for my own books anymore, but I have thought about doing over the cover for the third time to try to get that audience, because my book, I consider it an erotic drama. It's not a romance, but it's not a full erotica either. It's a full novel with a very thick, good storyline. I tell people all the time, take the sex out, and you still have a solid book.
Thank you so much for sharing that experience, and listening to you. You would notice I was smiling because I could I could relate to that experience in terms of not thinking who your target audience is, not thinking about your front cover design. And I know, like you, I could relate to one of my particular books where the front cover design doesn't match the content that sits inside of there. As you said, I like it, I design something and I will be, oh boy, I'm fascinated every time I see it, but it does not resonate with the reader. You might think it's a children's book, So thanks very much for that piece of information there. When do you hope to, when you mentioned something also about, I don't have time for my own books. What are your ambitions in terms of returning to writing and publishing piece of your own work?
Lord, I don't know. I have 4 unwritten books right now. Like, literally, like, during the pandemic, I like Make It Rain is my novel that was released in 2017. And since the novel was released, I have many people all over the world who are threatening me with bodily harm if I don't write a sequel. So I tried writing a sequel. I tried opening, but I was going through some traumatic experiences, really, which really killed my writing vibe. So I started and stopped 2 sequels to Make It Rain. So I have 2 sequels to Make It Rain. And then I also decided, I said, let me try to do, instead of doing a full novel, let me do a, a set of short stories. But even that, I've written a couple and then just petered out. So really, I just need, now that I am so busy with other people's work, what I need to do is just do some serious time management and just sit back down and just, how I got my novel written was just 1,000 words a day. Just a thought. I never allowed myself to, like, people who can do 2,300 words, 2,500 words. I was working a government job and I had to go to sleep. So after working a full day, I still had to, so I could not commit to 2,500 words, 3,000 words. So I just did 1,000 words a day, 1,000 words a day. And if the mood caught me and I wrote, then I found myself getting to 2,000. But if I wrote and then it petered out and I was just at like 700 or just at like 800 and something, I didn't kill myself. I did something for the day and I just shut my laptop down and went to sleep. But so again, consistency. But for me, I guess I will have to go back to that mode for myself and just commit to 1,000 words a day, no matter what it is, and just try to push that way. Maybe that's how I can get it done.
Let's talk about your consistency on Instagram with Passionate Words Editing Services. In closing, tell me a little bit about your live streams and where people could connect with you.
I don't do all that content myself. So Bijo Media is my business partner. She actually, I pay her for the content creation. So she actually helps me create the content itself, like the actual posts and stuff like that. And so because she's a marketing strategist, she is the one who like goads me and says, okay, do this. I want you to take this particular post and boost it and that kind of thing. So that's one of the things. And so in terms of consistency, she helps me definitely, like she actually helps me create my content. So I pay her a fee, she creates my content and I basically do the rest. But she told me about she encouraged me to start doing lives. And so Instagram Live, I've been doing it now, maybe just a little bit over a month, a little bit under a month. FYI, with Passionate Words, for your information, with Passionate Words, the goal is to speak to people who have gone through Passionate Words and they've done their books through Passionate Words, as also to talk to industry leaders and about different things. For example, I had a lovely conversation with a lady from Australia who writes blurbs. The blurb is a work at the back, stuff at the back of the book. That's what she does exclusively, and she has a course called Blurb Magic that I took. And in taking that, I elevated my own skills and then added a new service to my company. So I actually brought her on to talk about blurbs and stuff. We had a wonderful conversation. But I've also been talking to people who passed through Passionate Words. That is on our Instagram page. So if you want to follow me, you can do so at passionate.words.editing246. Passionate.words.editing246.
And so I will also put the links to all your pages and businesses in the show notes so that the listener can check it out.
Yes, please. So definitely you can find me there. If you're interested in having a talk about your book about anything book related, if you have a manuscript you want to have, if we can talk about consultation. We do it all. Our motto is from concept to completion and beyond. So literally from the first consultation all the way up to actually getting it published on Amazon, and even beyond that with the marketing. So we make sure that we are a one-stop shop for anybody who's interested in self-publishing.
Robert, is an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'm sorry that it has taken so long, but it's exciting to talk to you and see that we connect on so many different levels, from our work as writers to database programmers to now helping writers in the Caribbean get published. And the body of work that you have under your belt is amazing in that space of time. To think about 30 books and counting, and is a fantastic service that you're offering. And I wish you the best in the future and look forward to reading one of your books and the sequels that you chat about.
Well, for sure, you can get to my books. If you you can find me on Instagram. I actually did a short link, so you can go to bit.ly/erotic empire. The Erotic Empire is the name that I had under the, like, Passionate Words Editing is my business side, and the Erotic Empire is what I encompass for my erotic work. So that has its own, let's say, business name. So the Erotic Empire is the name of that, and that we could have a whole conversation about that side as well. But so bit.ly/erotic empire, again, those will be in the show notes. I will say, I personally have focused on erotic writing, but I am going to publish, or I am going to help edit anything. We have done Christian books, we have done history books, we have done school literature, we have done fantasy novels, sci-fi novels. We have done a couple erotic books outside of my own, but we've also done like, actually, if you can see very, very far in the distance there, is this is a list of these people. These are people who I've actually done work for, and so books of poetry. So just because I personally write erotica does not stop you from coming to me and having a discussion about your books. That, like I said earlier, I had a Christian client, and that was the story that I said I would talk about on another time. She was a little bit hesitant because she knew about my erotic work. And I said, I have a whole company that is separate from my erotic work. I can do your Christian devotion with no problem.
Yes. Fantastic, Robert. So thanks very much for sharing all the experience and the wisdom, the things about writing, editing, connecting, your consistency, people liking you and trusting you, and the importance of writers being out there promoting you talk about them becoming a business immediately once you have their book, and then going on to showcasing it on different platforms, TikTok, Instagram. So I really appreciate chatting, and I look forward to talking some more in the future.